All right, straighten up. Okay, so I am first time DM. I am painting as we can see, a white dragon. This is your typical whiz kid white dragon. I believe it's adult white dragon. Um, these aren't my favorite, but the nice thing is they don't break. They're really rubbery, so it's really good for the table. The sculpts are actually pretty good. Sometimes the prints, there's print lines. And here actually we had some pretty big gaps, seams where the two pieces were going in there. I fixed that up with some green stuff. And then I actually primed this. They supposedly come as pre-primed. But there's a lot of work to be done. The teeth were they were like Tic Tacs. The line here that I was just talking about, I missed something, which I don't like. There is this printed sort of line. You probably can't even really see that, but it's this sort of artificial seam line right here at the crest of the spikes there. I could probably attend to that with a knife, but then I'd have to reprime it and do all sorts of things that I might just try to hide that with paint. But anyway, I primed it after I did my uh, puttying. I used green stuff. I cut away some of the teeth to make them a little bit sharper. There were some seams again on the tail that I sanded away. Primed it in black. And then I did a dry brushing of this off-white, the Wraith Bone, which you totally can't see, in the Citadel paint, which had a good look. It brought out, and that's the reason why I like to do the dry brushing, is it shows you really all the textures you have to work with. And I like to work with the textures given you instead of having to do that. But I didn't like the sort of the black and white look to it, which I generally like. I like that sort of gritty look, but with the white dragon, I wanted him to really exude cold. And so I basically doused him with the contrast Silesium blue. I don't play Warcraft, so I don't know what any of these colors mean. And then I dry brushed it again with the bone. And then now I did some white. And I'm sort of ruining it. I did too much. I used some of this shade, the Nuln oil, and you can sort of see it here on the wings a bit. Again, this is really hard. It's very subtle, but again, it gives it the dark black look that I sort of got away with putting the Silesium blue on. So I think I'm going to sort of undo that a little bit here today, because again, I want it to have the blue look, not that my standard sort of gritty black look. And we're not using a lot of paint here, so it really doesn't matter. But I want to have in most parts in the crevices, I want to have that dark blue. And actually I put some of the Nuln here on the spikes, and that actually I like, because it's sort of a deeper crevice look. And that could be black, but on the wings, it just sort of makes him look a little bit dirty. And I don't want him to be dirty. I want him to be cold, right? And so some of it I like, but I did too much. And sometimes we'll find that we do that. And that's actually one of the nice things about the contrast paints, is that they're all very thin. And so really you would have to screw up many, many times to start deteriorating some of your texture. It happens though. But so anyway, so I'm trying to take away a little bit of that black. I'm going to give it a little bit more. And again, this is a white dragon, so this is not a blue dragon. But what I did find as I started playing around with it, and this sort of looks cool. So I don't want to take away all the black. I want to. Well, this is actually why I'm actually streaming this, is because there's so many amazing painters on these platforms that will show you the techniques. Some of them aren't really that hard to do if you learn them, if you spend some time and you learn them, and you could get some amazing, really amazing. I want to do these streams with my glasses off, but my vision disagrees with that, so we're going to do the best we can. And anyway, there's so many great painters on these platforms that I am not competing with them, because I have been painting really my whole life. I had a father that got me into art and drawing and doodling, really, and that did a lot for me. And so I tried my hand at being a professional painter in my youth, and I really didn't like the art world that much. So I gave that up, and I spent the next 30 years doing talk radio, which I enjoyed for that amount of time. And but now I've discovered D&D in the last few years, and I am a first-time DM for a campaign. I've DM'd for some one-shots, not a ton, but a few one-shots. But I've recently started my campaign, and that is the Tyranny of Dragons campaign, which was the first campaign module released by Wizards of the Coast in 5e, the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons, in 2014. And so it was re-released, I think a year, maybe two years ago, I think, because the original version of the module was a two-parter in two different books. And they made it into, Alexa, shut off the alarm. They made it into one module, and they fixed some things because the original module was released before all the core rule books were released. And so they released a module before you had all the finalized rules were even written, and there were some inherent problems there that just didn't go by what would end up being the rules. And although I think they really should have fixed more than they did, in my opinion. But one of the reasons why I like it is because it's a pretty linear campaign, and it has some outcomes that I just really don't like. Some missions that the players will go on, that's a little too heavy, that end up, there's no chance of success. And anyway, so I liked it. I like the dragon thing. I like it. It has an old school D&D feel to it. I like the fact that it goes up and down the Sword Coast. It's not stuck in one biome per se, and it needs a lot of fixing. And that's sort of what I wanted to do with my first campaign. I wanted to not have the pressure to come up with everything. I wanted a structure that was pre-done for me, and that's what it gives me. And it allows me to lean in to the pre-written while requiring me to step up as a DM and change a bunch of stuff. And that's why I like it. And that's why I decided to do it. So this is sort of me chronicling those. I should really paint it where you guys can see it, right? That probably would be helpful. This is sort of me chronicling my first time campaigning for people who maybe get intimidated by being a DM or having to paint a miniature, and the stuff that they see online, while maybe inspiring, could also be intimidating. And again, I concur, but I've been playing the game for 2 years. I've done my one shots. I've been working on this campaign, both the planning of it, updating of it, and expanding of it. Also creating it's all around the table. This is not online. So I have miniatures. All 6 of my players are in house around the table, and I really don't use any sort of electronics except for maybe some sound effects and whatnot while I DM the game. Although some of my players, really most maybe, of the players use D&D Beyond for their characters. But we're all together, therefore we could do miniatures and whatnot, and we all get to interact with the toys of the game. And for me, that's part of the fun. It's gotten me back into painting. And again, everything doesn't need to be perfect. And I mean, perfect, really. That's sort of, see, doesn't need to be perfect. When you do that, you run the risk of that happening. And so this particular white dragon here doesn't come in until the latter. And again, spoilers for Tyranny of Dragons. If you're playing as a player, Tyranny of Dragons, and you don't want the plot points to be spoiled, this is not a stream for you. If you're DMing it, I'd love to hear your feedback, what you're doing the same, maybe if I inspired you in any way, or if you have any thoughts for me and want to backseat DM. I guess I'm opening myself up to that. But again, nothing about what I'm doing here is saying what people should do as far as running this campaign, this module. This is all about what I want to do with it for my table and my play style and my players' play style. So this white dragon, spoilers again, last time, I'm going to warn you, Tyranny of Dragons campaign. Comes in near the end. He lives in the castle in the clouds. He has a lair down there. He is guarding the horde that the players have been following all campaign. And this is where this is basically the lair that is the final showdown between the players and the bad guys for the first half of the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. So this, I think, looks good. I think for a lot of people, you really almost might be done with this. And this is one of the things, and again, I'm not saying that this is going to be the best painting ever of this type of dragon. And I'm sure you could go online and find tricks on it. But, a lot of times, the people who show you all the great tricks and trade, awesome. But they're painting that miniature. Like, how many times have they painted that particular miniature that way? this is the first time I've ever painted a white dragon. So that's the experience level I'm coming from. Oh, this is my dead one. Okay, so that was my Wraith Bone. And now I'm going to go to my White Scar Citadel paint to make them pop. So this is basically what we're seeing is the contrast Elysian blue base coat, basically over a dry brush, whites or the Wraithbone, and then White Scar. And then I have one more major color I'm going to do afterwards that I think really sort of makes it pop, because that's sort of what you want, right? Is, I know, why am I starting this on the face? You want it to pop on your table. You want to, like, you right? I mean, this is, you want folks, whoo, that's pretty. And there, and so I don't want him to look like, oh, there's a blue dragon that looks like a white dragon. I want it to be a white dragon, but I want him to be cold, right? I want him to look like he is frozen. He likes being frozen. He's white, he's cold, and he is going to frost the hell out of you. So that's why I did the undercoat as the blue, because I didn't want what I generally do is just sort of a grungy look. I like grungy looks to my miniatures. I don't like them, that sort of clean Warhammer style. Boom, hitting the edges and seeing all the great things that happens. And that looks great. But I like a bit of roughness to my guys. But the black and white wasn't working, again, because a lot of times the black dragon and then the white dragon, I think probably more than the rest, it's a little bit hard to get a good amount of detail without losing the blackness of your black dragon and the whiteness of your white dragon. Like, I don't want him to look like a blue dragon, but I want to have a good amount of blue on here. To give him that sort of cold effect. And so I don't want to do a wet panel. So here I am coming in, and really, it's funny, when I started painting these miniatures a couple years ago, or a year and a half, whatever it was, I would have my first character was a dwarf rogue. And I think I spent a few weeks on my 28, millimeter figure. And I was using the wrong paints back then. I was using what I used in my my youth when I was doing like model spaceships and stuff. Not acrylic stuff, oil stuff. And it was really difficult to get it to work for me. And so over the time, I'm like, oh, I'll try the acrylics. It's easier, blah, blah, blah. And oh boy, yeah, absolutely. It's easier. And you get better effects. So it works out all the way. But I still have some of my old school habits that might not be the best, but in anything that you think doesn't look good here, it's just because of the camera. In person, it looks great, he says. So here he is. But that's the main reason I want to do this is I don't want people that are coming to the hobby or deciding, hey, I'd like to check out the hobby in a non-digital way, in a around the table way. And because the minning thing, you could go down a hole with the minis, and you don't really want to do that either, right? Because it's a hobby. It's going to cost us money or whatnot to play, which is fine. But you also don't want to go crazy as far as spending bazillions amount of money on sometimes things that really don't matter. In the end, minis are nice and minis are fun, but that's not the crux of it. It's just a play aid, and really that's sort of it. And another thing is, it's sometimes just being done, right? Sometimes too much is too much. But I just want people not to be intimidated and not do it, or buy a bunch of minis and have them sitting there in their drawer or wherever they're keeping them on their desk and not painting them because they want them to be perfect. I have folks in my group that paint minis, and they look great, and they're all of they all look as good as they need to, right? Um, and I always appreciate when people bring a little extra to the table. And so that's basically what I try to do as a DM. I'm actually mostly about the story. I'm not a big mechanics guy. There are people around the table that know the mechanics better than I, and that's an understatement. We're playing 5e24, and that's fine because I like to tell a good story, and I do want to challenge the players as far as what's going on, the preconceptions of things. But I don't claim to be an expert. I'm a first-time DM. And so I think this guy is looking great. I think we have that nice bright white now that's making it pop a little bit more, right, from the wraith bone. You still see that blue underneath, which gives it a little bit of a cold feeling to him, right? He looks chilly. I want him and his environment to be very much simpatico, because again, this guy, the players are going to encounter him in his lair, so he's going to have all of his lair actions and whatnot. So hopefully he's going to be really tough if the players decide to encounter him. Now, there's also a white dragon at the beginning of the second half of this adventure that I forget his. I really haven't looked. I've read it all, but I don't remember his name. And I'm thinking that I might make it the same white dragon, who now maybe wants to get a little revenge, right? So I don't know. So this guy, because I think that's, instead of having two white dragons and like, oh, you kill, get away, and then get another crack at him, the players are emotionally invested in it. And I think that players emotionally invested in dealing with a bad guy or a good guy, really, is going to lead to more interesting experience for the players around the table. And like the campaign Tyranny of Dragons, again, spoilers, opens with a dragon attack of a blue dragon, which appears way later again, and but doesn't really do anything either time. And I think if you have a dragon, it's just not a monster, right? It should be a personality. It should have motivations. Why is it there, right? It's not just about. It's not just like a goblin or something. It's smart. It's smarter than some of my players' characters. Literally. So I made that first blue dragon a black dragon, and I made it Voargamonthar, which is the black dragon that lives in the Mirror of Dead Men, which the players go to. And the module actually mentions him, but doesn't do anything with him. So I'm taking that. I'm like, okay, so the players at some point are going to encounter this dragon. They're not fighting him at level 1 anyway, so it doesn't matter what type of dragon it is. But I'm going to make it a dragon that they see in the future, not too distant future. And I basically had him say, see you later. I have a deal for you. And they're like, that's a black dragon. It's not to be trusted. And then he goes away. Now, that actually went down different than I thought it would. But still, I was laying the ground roots for a second reaction. Now, so this is what I'm looking forward to. And I played around with it a little bit before. The Contrast Pilar Glacier is a contrast page, but it's very thin. In fact, sometimes I don't even use it. I use it. I'm like, oh, there's no anything. But this, and I see it a little bit. I put it on there a little bit. That was sort of my test spot. Just putting it just a little bit here and there brings out that this is where I would benefit from a wet palette. But just brings out that blue underneath just a little bit. And gives it that sort of glaciery vibe. And the one thing I've learned with doing these monsters, that when you're doing the skin on these monsters, is you don't want it to look patchy. You know, if you're going to do something over here, it should be over there too, as long as it makes sense. You know, like what type of skin. And sometimes you really sort of even want to get into the mind of the creature and say, you know, maybe you're, you know, where the light, where this color is, maybe it's a little bit weaker. It's between the armor. And that gives you a gameplay thing where you could, maybe your players could learn something about that in some sort of a check, right? Because I have some players, they knew they were doing Tyranny of Dragons, and they got some backgrounds that give them a little bit more knowledge about dragons than, you know, folks would necessarily have otherwise. And so since the players might have that knowledge, they're like, oh yeah, you know that the lighter parts of their skin are more or less armored, and therefore more vulnerable to attack. And then maybe you give them advantage on something or an extra something or other. And I think that makes it more fun. If you're paying attention to my minis that I've spent hours on, right? and you notice a detail, and you're like, "Hey, DM, I noticed. Blah, blah, blah. Is that actually part of the monster, or in the scene, or whatever?" Because I'm also doing terrain pieces, scattered terrain mostly, um, and a lot of it is being purpose built for this campaign. But if they notice, like, oh, hey, there's a treasure box here, to make it an obvious example, is there treasure in the real world? Is that treasure box in the actual world that the player is playing in? And I can say, it certainly is. And then I don't have to do, like, you don't have to do a perception check. Like, do I see treasure? Like, no, you saw it. There it is. Walk over to it, see what happens. And that, to me, gives the players a reason to pay attention to what the thing that you're working on, that you've spent so much time on, and gives them a gameplay benefit. Because I think if you're not doing if there isn't a gameplay element besides positioning on a grid fighting, then players are going to be more interested in their character or whatever they're going on. If I want them to be interested in all the planning that I've done, it should be because they're nice, or we're so appreciative of all the work that I'm doing. It's because their character might be able to benefit in some way and do something cool. And I think that's what being a DM is all about, right? It's giving your players the opportunity to do something cool, or have their characters do something cool. And sometimes it'll work out for them, sometimes it won't, right? Like, I would love it to work out for them, but then I rolled the die or a coin. Last week, some stuff was going down that I had not foreseen, and I had to make some stuff up on the fly. And there sort of was a moment where I hadn't planned it, and I sort of inherently, I'm like, God, I'd love to give this to them because they would look cool. But that's me as a GM putting my finger on the scale, right? And I didn't want to do that. It's like, it's not up to me to make that call. So I flipped the coin, my yes or no coin. And, it's like a Harvey Dent sort of a thing. And it came up no. And I said, nope, that doesn't work for you. You're screwed. You're fucked. And I was very satisfied with that, because I got a look from a player like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't give me that one. And I'm like, ugh. That's why we have, it's like, I wanted to give it to you, but it just seemed like that's me being unfair to you. Because if I just say, yeah, you get to do that, and you succeed, sometimes it doesn't feel that as good as when you earn it. And so, whatever this instance was, they had to go in, and their clever way of doing it didn't end up working. And so they had to fight it out in a way that they were hoping to get around. And God bless them. I had all this terrain and all this stuff, and I was going to let them circumvent it because they were sort of being clever play. But it just felt like that was me being nice instead of being a good DM. And so I flipped for it, and it was no, and so the answer was no. And I felt that was good. That felt right to me. That I don't get to decide everything. Sometimes the die gets to decide. And I think we had a great session, honestly, that went somewhat different than I thought. But it made me realize that uh, if there are going to be benefits for the player characters to notice something in the terrain that might give them a gameplay benefit, I, as a DM, need to make them aware of that, right? This, I think I'm going to, this bottom tail, I think I'm going to give more white dry brushing to. There's too much dark. And so I'm putting this on heavier than I necessarily would have, just so it maintains a little bit and through the white, and then maybe I won't have to do it again, but we'll see how that works out. So yeah, so if you're going to do terrain, if you're going to do minis, plant some Easter eggs in there and let your players know that those things exist. And maybe, don't say, oh, guys, if you look really closely, you might see something. I'm going to try to do it. I mean, you could do that, but I want to play it sort of close to the chest. I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to bring in an NPC, and maybe the NPC will notice something in the world and get a benefit out of it, or maybe even an enemy. And so then the players learn that way, like, oh, if they're paying attention, because sometimes they're not, that, hey, I need to look closer at this stuff because I might benefit from it. And that, I think, is cool, letting people figure it out on their own. Because I had this whole thing, the terrain I had last week were all these boulder heads, sort of like Easter Island, and I had a whole lore behind it. And they were being watched by a specific person that they're going to meet later. And I had all these things that were sort of baked into it if they explored it, and they didn't. And I was a little bummed, but I'm like, okay, that's sort of it. I'll, whatever. And then I'm like, well, they didn't explore it because they didn't know. They didn't know to look. And they didn't know to look just because I, as their DM, didn't give them that sort of clue. And so that's sort of one of the things why I'm doing this channel. It's not to show you how to do it. It's not to say, aha, I've been doing this for a million years and do it like this. It's so I could learn as I go and impart what I learn as we go through the process. And that's why I'm doing this channel. And I don't think anybody is really doing that. I think there's a lot of people that know the game and are sharing the game in their way, which is great. And I watch a lot of them. And I've learned a lot through it. But I wanted to give I started a little company to sell some of the terrain that I'm making and some of the minis that I'm painting. Not like it's an Etsy shop. I think it's on the crawl. It's not, I mean, some of it is just me painting 3D prints, licensed 3D prints, but and I'm not even selling those. I'm selling me painting them in my particular style, and also the terrain pieces that I'm making, and most of the terrain pieces, well, really all of the terrain pieces so far, are made 100% by me. They're not painted 3D print stuff. It's all stuff I've made either out of foam or balsa wood, or all sorts of different things. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be investing in this hobby and creating all this stuff, you'd like it to pay you back a little bit. And so, and I'm between gigs here and there. I make podcasts on my day job, but I want to be a part of the creative community around this hobby. And so I started creating these terrain pieces, and then I'm like, I will make more if people want them to buy them from me. And then I'm like, oh, well, I think I have a decent story to talk about as far as the backstory of some of these minis and these miniature or these terrain pieces. And so, how do you communicate that? Well, a YouTube channel or TikTok channel or whatever it is, video stuff. And so I started to figure out all this stuff that you are seeing now to contribute to that. And that's really what I'm doing. That's why I'm here. And, we'll see how successful or not successful it is. And that is dependent on me to do it, which we're doing now. And then the audience to see if people appreciate it or like it. See, hopefully this comes up. Mute. There you go. So that's sort of my story. I think this guy's coming along great. I think this bright, very light blue is popping in all the sorts of ways I want it to pop. I think I'll give it one more wraith with a white dry brush before I'm done. And I think that'll be pretty much it. I got to figure out what I want to do with his eyes. A lot of times with the dragons, I like to just do points of white and let it be. But he's a white dragon, so that's not necessarily super distinctive. So I tend to do too much, right? Because here's some sort of armor here, and I'm giving it a little bit of this light white, which maybe again is too much because these are the weak points. But again, here I am. Can you see I don't know if you can even see this. I'm doing under the wing, right behind the front legs. I'm putting a lot of this light blue, the Plinar glacier, the glacier color. And I think any hit here is going to hit a little bit harder. So again, I really love how all these colors are playing together. And again, the folks that have the channels of painting the Space Marines or whatever it is. And God, they have some beautiful techniques and they're very talented. But again, they've painted these things many, many times. I've never painted a white dragon before. I've repainted him a couple times here, right? And just sort of saying, oh, I wanted to give the base coat of blue instead of black, which I generally do because I generally like that dirtied, weathered look. That's not necessarily realistic, but it gives it a gritty look. And I did that with this guy, and although that gave me a better appreciation of the model's texture, because I wasn't in love with this model, but I was having a hard time finding a white dragon that I liked, and it had a pretty neutral, it was a very neutral sort of pose to him. And so I'm like, I'll get him. And it was a WizKids, which means I don't need to worry about anybody on the table breaking him, like some of the resin print stuff that I have purchased. And now that I have all my 3D printing stuff, I'll print my own. And I'm still working on my concoction to make the resin as table friendly as possible. But you're not going to get anything. I mean, this guy, you could literally throw him across the table and he'll be fine. I mean, you might ship the paint or something, but it's very unlikely that you're going to harm you're going to lose an arm or something. So right here, again, I'm basically sticking to the recesses of the armor, right? This is sort of the new, anything new is going to have a little of this glacier blue, anything fresh. And it gives it a much more pop than it had before. So I think the reason it's popping so nicely for me, that's why I think I'm being a little bit more liberal with it than I was originally going to be. But I still want to give the hardened armor, keep it a little bit whiter, keep it a little bit pure, and then hit the softer parts, right? Like the bottom of the feet with a little heavier. Although, especially with the bottom of the feet, these I'm going to hit again with white, with the bright white to give it a little bit more oomph. Now, here is sort of the big question that I'm asking myself. With some of the armor aspects of it, the old armor on this white dragon, because I don't believe this is an ancient white dragon model. It seems to me pretty firmly in the adult category, but even then it seems like younger adult. But I do want to give it some age, and I do want to give some of its scale some weathering, right? And so I guess I could hit it with some gray. I already decided, like, oh, I hit it with a little black, and I'm like, oh, I don't like the black. The black really goes against the blue. It takes over instantly, and it takes away from that frosty sort of look. So I don't want to hit it with any black. I'm done with any black. That's too dangerous for me as far as undoing the effect I'm going for. And I'm playing in my mind with giving it some yellow, which scares me, right? Because yellow and blue makes green, and I don't want them to be green. I don't want them to be moldy looking, right? And that is the last thing I want to do, because he is, I mean, if I had him living in a jungle, like, why is a white dragon living in a jungle? Um, and there's some gameplay, like, why is he? And that would be, part of the adventure, maybe. But that's not this guy. This guy is living in an ice palace at the bottom. Spoilers to Tyranny of Dragons. He's living in an ice palace in the sky. It's not warm. He's not going to be molding. I mean, that would be cool, right? But that's for a different day. That's a different idea. That would be a different paint, right? And I would buy a different guy for that. But I'm just thinking just a little bit of I don't want to overdo it here, but I do want, I'm giving myself a little bit more light here. I know it makes it sort of wash out for you guys, so I'm trying to do the best of both worlds, but I do need a little bit more white. This paint, I think I might have spilled this one. I don't know if I've used this much of it, but it's getting to be where I'm running out. Which is so funny, because so much, I think I've had to do it very heavy. When I have used it for it to be seen, I've had to use a lot of it. And again, I think the pros will say, well, you're probably not using it right then. And that probably is correct. But I like learning about techniques and how these paints were designed to be used. But I don't want it to have that sort of samey look. I want it to look the way I want it to look. And if that means using the paints, quote unquote, wrong, then okay. See, right now, I'm really loving this. And again, I don't know if you could see it on camera, but it's this light blue is just making it work. It's giving it that nice stretched skin look, and it's making it look cold, right? Like, this dragon likes to be cold. This white dragon likes to be cold. And see, here's the other thing, and this is why one of the reasons why I love playing D&D in person is because I am spending so much time with this dragon that is a character. And so if I wasn't spending this time painting him, maybe I wouldn't have come across the fact that, to me, if he's asked to do anything that isn't, keeping him nice and cold, right? And I live in Florida, right? And you see the people all the time that if they're out of their air-conditioned haven, they're complaining and sad and hot. Or if the air conditioning isn't set in a certain way. And again, my players are Florida players, obviously, since we're all doing around the table. And so that could be part of this guy's character. that could be relatable to my players and funny. Because really, I mean, it's a white dragon. This guy is not going to, I want him to pack more of a punch than they're expecting. I don't want them to roll over this dragon. And it's basically part of the climactic end. So I imagine he has a lot of escape routes in his lair. We're going to be seeing him again, I think, unless they get him. And again, the dice and player choices will determine that. But as written, this guy has more to do than just to be killed. And we'll see how it plays out. And I'm going to go with how it goes. But I want to give him at least enough character. So if they do run across him again, they have feelings about that. They're invested in their own opinion of this particular white dragon. They have an aha moment when they realize it is the same white dragon. And hopefully that gives them a more engaged, personalized experience. Because how it's written in the campaign, there are these two white dragons that, again, one is at the end of the first half of the campaign, but the second one is relatively quickly in the second half. So the players will remember this guy. And so I'm inclined to make him live. But I'm not in fully control of that. And if he does live, well, players will certainly have leveled up a few times or at least once, between the two encounters. So I'm going to have to add some stuff in the campaign to make sure that they don't go, oh, we know how to take out this guy, and therefore. And there you go. I'm really enjoying this light blue, what it's doing to him. I'm very happy with him. He definitely needs another hit of white dry brushing because he's a little too blue now. He definitely is too blue now. But that's okay because that's okay because when I hit it with the dry brush, I could be a little bit heavy with it and still keep a lot of what I'm doing here, but just bring it back a little bit. I mean, I definitely do have what's his name? The, happy little trees guy mentality of happy accidents. Except if you tip your pot over. That's not a happy accident. So even on the wings here, I'm going a little heavier than I thought I was going to go with this. And again, this paint is if you're not painting over white, it's really hard to make this paint out at all. So I think once I hit it again with the dry brush of the, was that Scar white Scar, we'll maintain enough of it to maintain that frigid appearance, but not enough to make it look like he's a very pale white dragon or blue dragon. Of course, my player, I actually know my players have seen this model in another campaign, as a white dragon. So I know they'll recognize the model. Um, and yeah, in the back of my mind, I am that shallow where I'm like, I want them to go, oh wow, that's a nicely. We've seen that model before, and that looks extra special because I do want them to look extra special. Yeah. I'm very happy here. It's nice when you're happy, and then again, that's what it's a hobby, right? It should make us happy. It should give us enjoyment. Boop, boop, boop. And this guy is because he looks chilly. He looks sort of like he's living on a glacier, and he is living on a glacier. That's too much. He has a lot of detail. I'm actually now I'm a little looser with my painting because now I know 100% that I'm definitely going to come back on this thing with more white. So you learn as you go. And again, that's the thing. This is why first time DM is here to learn with a camera in front of me. It's not just painting though, or crafting any of the terrain stuff, which is definitely going to be part of the channel, as you could obviously see. But just planning out the adventure. Recap. I'm not doing any live play or any of that type of stuff, but I am going to plan my evenings play sessions here, take notes, come up with things, go over the campaign as written, and add to it as I feel enhances my campaign. And again, even if you're not doing Tyranny of Dragons, I'm just hoping that the processes and the thought processes that I'm going through give you ideas and encouragement to do what you want to do. Because that's the thing. You got to do what you want to do. Don't hold back. Go for it. And hopefully you have players that are fit your ballywick and things run smoothly. But again, I think the most important thing that I think we've hit on in this particular stream is that painting these mini gives me a better idea of this dragon's character. He likes to be cold, and he will not like fireballs, and he will be complaining that the castle, the floating castle, is too low. It has to go higher. It's too hot. And they're like, well, like, you know. So again, it's not just a monster. Dragons are not just monsters. These are old even an adult one is old, and old people get crabby. And what do old people get crabby about? The temperature in the room, right? It's either too hot or too cold or whatever. And so this guy is going to be. Now I don't want to put too much in the here, but I will put a little bit here, just because there's going to be an armor thing, right? So he has to have a little bit more flexibility in his head. So I'm going to give it a little bit more light blue there. Boom. Remember, your top down is probably your most important visual, right? Because that's where most of your players are going to see it. I think that counts. Something to keep track of. His back, foot. I know you're not going to be able to see this, so I'll try to do it pretty quick. There we go. If I'm not holding my pot, I like to close it because I have spilled. Okay, so again, yeah. So this one I painted probably better than this one. This one's a little heavier, but again, I didn't know I was going to do another pass. I like it. I think it looks great. I think he is definitely too blue. I think I'm going to go pretty heavy under here, though. Because again, I want to give a little bit difference between the top and the bottom. Bottom of the wings, I want to, he's a little more scaly on the top. A little softer on the bottom. So really just lather it on here. Let's not pretend. This is really where I want, I want a little bit of a difference between my top and my bottom. And this is where I'll let the contrast paint do what it's supposed to do, right? Not that much, though. Okay. There you go. Look at that. Good. Yeah. So you can definitely see a difference there between that. So I'm going to do that again. I'm happy with that. Contrast paint. Go. Right? But this guy is going to be crabby. And he's going to be hot. And again, I think that's something that the players will get a hoot out. Maybe even they could, that will instruct them of how they might want to approach this guy. Now, it's not going to be, they don't all have to be wizards to know that fireballs, I imagine white dragons don't do well with fireballs, but that seems to, I would have to check the new monster manual, which I am not doing right now. Okay. So he is good. Do I want to hit the below here? Let's see. I do want him to fit into his base pretty good. I want him to be very camouflaged here. So I usually don't do it so verbatim, but I really want him to just fit in with this base. Camouflage in the snow. There you go. Okay. So now, make sure my brush is dry. I'm going to go back to the white scar. I actually don't want to use this brush again. I want to use this guy. Get a little bit different effect. have a dryer in that. There you go. Because I want to do a, yeah. Oh, much. Look at that. Maybe a little heavier. Too heavy. Okay, let's try this. Let's see, a little tighter. That. That's good. A nice frosting. I want to frost it, right? See, I'm sure you probably can't see the difference between these two. I bet that it's going to be hard to see on camera with the lighting the way I have. I'm still setting up shop here, you know. Let's see. Yeah, one more on there. I love this though. Okay, good. See these feet. Down here, especially. Look at that. So yeah, so he is definitely a white dragon, right? There's no doubt that this guy is a white dragon, but he's frosty. A little bit here, maybe on that. Bones. And I got to do the eyes. I got to do the mouth. Maybe I'll put something on the base to make it a little shiny, like it is ice. But other than that, I think I'm really pretty done with this guy. I'm very happy with him. He came out pretty easy. I didn't have to spend days and days and days on him. Definitely a white dragon. He has that frosty glow to him. And really, it was basically dry brushing. It's a white, black base coat. Did a white dry brush on it to get a sense of the textures. And then I put on the contrast Celestium blue, you know, any deep royally used sort of blue. On him, I basically base coated it, let the light contrast paint, let it do what it did. So you still got a sense of the depth and the ins and outs of the design. Did the wraith bone, and then did the scar white scar, hit it up with this guy, the glacier, and then more dry brushing of the white scar. And, you know, I mean, some of it was sort of painted, but you just sort of give the glacier paint into the recesses a bit. Don't let it take over too much, because, again, you want it to be a white dragon, not a blue dragon. but I think he is nice and frosty. And so all I have to do is the mouth, maybe something around the eyes, and then I'll consider whether I want to give any little titch of yellow to some of the points, that to make it sound like the hardest points of his armor are a little yellowed from damage and life and all those sorts of things. But more or less, this is him. He's pretty much done. And I think this was the first time I did a white dragon, and I'm very happy with him. So there you go. I hope you got something out of it, and I have a better sense of him and as his character. He likes it cold, and he's going to complain to his giant who controls the cloud castle in the sky. To can you go higher? Can it go higher? It's I have some melting issues here in my part of the castle. So anyway, I hope I was helpful in some ways. Follow, subscribe, and hopefully I'll be doing a lot of first time DM stuff, both crafting, painting, and working on campaign stuff and learning and making mistakes and seeing how what my plan is, the execution of the plan, and then coming back afterwards saying what worked and what didn't work, and ways to make playing D&D with your friends even more fun and engaging, and keep them coming back to the table. So to you, please come back to my table. You're invited every time. And now is the awkward part. I very purposely hit the end, and then it ends whenever it ends.